Hey, what's up, house groups? I read something really fascinating this week. Eagles tend to make their nests in really high, rocky, craggy places that are almost impossible to get to. But when they start building their nests, they actually start with thorn bushes and pokey branches. And then they lay the pelts of the animals they've killed and a bunch of feathers on top to make it soft for the little baby eaglets. Eaglets? I don't know if that's what they're... Baby eagles. Whatever the little eagles are called. And then something happens. As the little eagles grow up, they grow big enough eventually to go and strike out on their own, but they don't want to leave because the nest is so comfortable. So the mother eagle stirs the nest, kind of moves the furs and feathers around so it becomes a little bit less comfortable. And the little eagles still don't leave. And so eventually the mother eagle takes all the furs and the feathers out so that the young eagles are laying on thorn bushes to the point where it becomes so uncomfortable that they have to go. That they have to strike out on their own. And it's fascinating in nature to think that the only thing that can inspire young eagles to soar, to go out and be the majestic creatures God created them to be, is discomfort. They have to literally be poked and prodded to go become what they were made to be. And it's interesting to think about in the middle of a culture where comfort is treated almost like an idol. We live in a society where it's like the highest possible good. We try to accumulate stuff and money and things so that we can be comfortable at all costs. We just chase it and seek it and put it on a pedestal. But I wonder if while we're chasing comfort, we don't end up settling for comfort and missing our purpose along the way. Like, what if God's dreams for our lives? What if God's dream for your life and mine had more to do with our contribution than with our comfort? We kicked off this brand new series this week, Paparazzi, Living in a World Where Everyone's Watching. We're digging in for the next few months to the book of James, talking about how if we live the way God created us to live, we can seize a better future for ourselves and our world. And Kiana kicked things off on Sunday by taking a look at James chapter 1, verses 1 through 8. It's a really familiar passage to churchy people. Those of us who've been around church know it. Like, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, when you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. And it's a really interesting verse because most of us read it and we think, oh, yeah, right. Or we read it and we've heard it, but we like to gloss over it. And we don't really like the idea of suffering trials of many kinds. And again, like Kiana said on Sunday, not if we suffer, when we suffer trials of many kinds. We want to be frustrated and we want to be comfortable and we don't like our trials. But James says that when we suffer, we can consider it pure joy. And I love that phrase, pure joy. Not like partial joy, not generic joy, not some sort of surface level joy that's here while we're happy and here while things are going good, but vanishes in the mist when there's pain and there's suffering and there's grief of any kind. No, pure joy. And I think what James is saying in these verses, what he's trying to get us to understand, is that pure joy is possible no matter what is happening in our lives. But in order to find it, in order to experience it, we need to fix our focus. We gotta shift our eyes away from our frustration and on to our future. The psalmist in Psalm 16, verse 11 says, "In your presence, God, I find fullness of joy." Like, God, in your presence, in the midst of your power, in the midst of your love, in the midst of your work in my life, I find the fullness of joy. And the thing about pain and suffering is it tends to bring God's presence into really, really sharp focus for us. When things are going well and when we're comfortable, it's easy to ignore it. It's easy to kind of forget that God is there. But when we're suffering, when we're hurting, when we're desperately in need, we remember that God is not only present, but that God is powerful and that hope is real. And we find a God who never wastes a hurt, but instead works inside of us to transform us into the people that he created us to be, to poke us and prod us out of our comfort, out of settling for less, so that we can soar, so that we can live the lives and the future he created us for. So joy, this fullness of joy that's found in God's presence, comes from God. It comes from focusing on what God is doing in our lives right now. And it's so easy when we're suffering to not focus on what God's doing in our lives right now, but to focus on what God is doing in someone else's life who doesn't have the same thing going on that I have. Someone else's life who seems to be having an easier go and a better time than me. Or it's easy when we're suffering to focus on like what happened 5 years ago that I'm still bitter about. Or 5 weeks ago or 5 minutes ago that I'm still bitter about. But if we can step out of that broken focus and see God for his love and for his power and for his presence in our lives in this moment, in the many moments where we suffer many trials of many kinds, then we can find this pure joy that doesn't go away when we're unhappy, that doesn't go up and down like a roller coaster alongside our emotions, but that gives us peace and hope no matter what's going on. Not just that God is present and that God loves, but that God is doing a thing in us that will allow us to contribute to our world and to the people around us in some really incredible ways. Like when we suffer, when times aren't fun, when they're not the way that we want them to be, we can look in and find self-pity and decide that we're a victim. We can look around and find comparison and decide that we deserve better, or we deserve something someone else has, or we can look up and find God and see his love and see his transformation and be poked and prodded from where we are and who we are into the lives and the futures he has for us and the impact he wants us to make on the people around us. Like when we suffer, if we can focus on what God is doing in our lives in this moment, the fact that he is present, that he never abandons us, that he loves us deeply, and that he won't waste our hurt, but instead he'll use it to transform us into people who can make a difference in our broken, hurting world, then we can find pure joy no matter what's going on in our lives. And that's not just a better way to live when we struggle, but it's a better way to live in a hurting world that's desperately struggling. Like people all around us are hurting, and if we can live like that, we can live in a way that's so countercultural it points them toward the Jesus that they need in the midst of their pain.